anything to do with the recording. Do you stand by that testimony, Mr. Patel?
Senator, what I said was I didn't do the recording.
You said you didn't have anything to do with the recording, which is interesting because here's what you told Steve Bannon on his podcast. So what we thought would be cool is if we captured that audio and then, of course, had the greatest president, President Donald J. Trump, recite the Pledge of Allegiance, then we went to a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it out as a song now releasing exclusively on the War Room. We. If you had nothing to do with it, Mr. Patel, why did you tell Steve Bannon and all his listeners that you did?
That's why it says we, as you highlighted.
Yeah, and you're part of the we, right? When you say we, that includes you, doesn't it, Mr. Patel?
Not in every instance.
Well, that's new. So when you said we, you didn't really mean you. Is that your testimony?
Not unless you have a new definition for the word we.
Oh, okay. I always thought we included the person who pronounced the word, but maybe not. Well, you also said this, Mr. Patel. We were able to capture the recording thanks to their courageous singing, and we were able to take it to a studio. So let me ask you, Mr. Patel, after saying we took it to a studio, did you take it to a studio?
Me personally, no.
After you said that we digitized and recorded it and all that, did you take it to a studio and digitize and record it?
Me personally, no.
Okay, so you were lying to Steve Bannon and his audience. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was using the proverbial we appropriately, as you've identified.
The royal we. Oh, I see. And so you certainly promoted the hell out of it, though, didn't you?
I don't know what that means, but I promoted the heck out of raising money for families in need.
With promotions on social media and saying you were going to get this to #1 on the billboards, right, Mr. Patel?
I think it did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Isn't that great? People who violently attack police have a #1 song thanks to you, Mr. Patel. That's something to be really proud of. Now, you've claimed, Mr. Patel, you didn't know about any of these people in the choir. Is that right?
I did not know about the violent offenders, and I did not participate in any of the violence in and around January 6th.
Tell me, Mr. Patel, what due diligence did you do to find out who was in the choir before you promoted their beautiful music? These people who assaulted law enforcement, what due diligence did you do?
Senator, I didn't record it myself.
So you did no due diligence before you promoted this song by these violent felons. Is that what you're telling us?
Senator, I did not record that myself.
So you're being considered for director of the FBI. And here you did no diligence to find out whether people you were associating with now the President of the United States in song were convicted of attacking police officers. Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know,
you
my entire
glorified
life.
it in song,
and I did not make a single dime out of it.
In song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that answer.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this. If an FBI director promoted a song of people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an FBI agent, would you say they were fit to be director?
Mr. Schiff?
Yes or no? Would they be fit to be director?
I am fit to be the director of the FBI.
If you were the FBI director and you promoted a song with someone who beat an FBI agent with a pole, would you say you were fit to be FBI director?
Mr. Schiff, I am fit to be FBI director based on my 16 years in government service.
And yet you did all these things, Mr. Patel. You can say, oh, I support law enforcement. I decry violence against law enforcement. You could say all that. It's what you did, Mr. Patel, that matters. It's what you did that matters. Well, let me ask you.
Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Patel, do you believe that background checks for firearm purchases are constitutional?
I don't know the in-depths of it, but I think that's what the Supreme Court has said, Senator.
So the word would be YES, yes. Can you say yes, are background checks constitutional?
I can say whatever the Constitution and the Supreme Court ruled is the rule of the land.
And what is the law of the land at the moment?
I'm not an expert on state-by-state background checks.
You're going to be universal background checks. Well,
that's different.
I think actually your answer is pretty telling. Let me ask you another question. Do you believe that civilian ownership of machine guns are protected by the Second Amendment?
Universal background checks are different. That's not what
I
I
asked you a
say.
separate question. Do you believe civilian ownership of machine guns is protected by the Second Amendment?
Whatever the courts rule in regards to the Second Amendment is what is protected by the Second Amendment.
Yet another telling response, colleagues, on another important issue. We've all talked, both sides of the aisle, about our concern about gun violence in America. I raise these questions because of an association I can observe between Mr. Patel and gun owners of America, a group staunchly opposed to firearm regulation, a group that Mr. Patel addressed in August, and a group that in December issued a press release applauding his nomination to be FBI director. Gun Owners of America has taken extreme positions, including the position that all background checks are unconstitutional and that civilian ownership of machine guns is protected under the Second Amendment. Mr. Patel, let me remind you that as FBI director, you would oversee critical responsibilities related to firearm regulation, including administering the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Yes, it's constitutional. It's in place for a reason. You would also regulate the distribution of machine guns to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Policies and programs in place for a reason. And given your hesitancy, given your answers, I'm concerned about your ability to do the job when it's not in alignment with groups like Gun Owners of America.
And Ms. Gabbard, let me be clear, at least in my views. I salute your service to our country. But I have serious doubts about your judgment. And those are some of the areas that I want to pursue. First, until you are nominated by the president to be the DNI, you consistently praise the actions of Edward Snowden. Some who, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Every member of this committee supports the rights of legal whistleblowers. But Edward Snowden isn't a whistleblower. And in this case, I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotistical serial liar and traitor who, quote, deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life. Ms. Gabbard, a simple yes or no question. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it. There would have been opportunities for him to come to you on this committee or seek out the IG to release that information. The fact is, he also, even as he broke the law, released information that exposed egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that are happening within our government that led to serious reforms that Congress undertook.
Chairman, we got 5 minutes. So I take your answer, and these are your quotes. Brave, please join my bipartisan legislation calling for charges to be dropped against him. Do you disagree that legislation was not appropriate? Do you believe he is brave or not?
Yeah,
Back those words?
once again, Senator, Edward Snowden broke the law. He
Ms. Gabbard,
also
I'm not
released
talking-
information
we agree that Edward Snowden
that
broke the
exposed
law.
the United States
Asking you a
government's
question whether
illegal
your
programs.
legislation and your words are still your beliefs. Yes or no, please.
I'm making myself very clear. Edward
Ma'am.
Snowden broke the law. He released information about the United
All right,
States
ma'am,
government's
I've got other issues to
illegal
raise.
activities.
Ma'am,
If I may just finish my thoughts, Senator. In this role that I've been nominated for, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will be responsible for protecting our
There is not a great deal in the public record about what you and Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad discussed for so long in January of 2017. And I think there's a great deal of interest from the American people about what was discussed in that meeting. So what did you talk about? And did you press Assad on things like his use of chemical weapons, systematic torture, and the killing of so many Syrians?
Yes, Senator. I upon returning from this trip, I met with people like then Leader Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, talked to them and answered their questions about the trip. And quite frankly, I was surprised that there was no one from the intelligence community or the State Department who reached out or showed any interest whatsoever in my takeaways from that trip. I would have been very happy to have a conversation and give them a back brief. I went with former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who had been there many times before and who had met with Assad before. A number of topics were covered and discussed, and to directly answer your question, yes, I asked him tough questions about his own regime's actions, the use of chemical weapons and the brutal tactics that were being used against his own people.
Were you able to extract any concessions from President Assad?
No, and I didn't expect to, but I felt these issues were important to address.
According to your revised trip report, your third
questions. I take it from what you have said to a couple of my colleagues that while we may disagree on the meaning of Rule 6E as to getting the transcript, you would not object to this committee seeking access to that transcript.
No.
And you're aware that Rule 6E permits you to talk about your own testimony. Will you testify to this committee, let's say in a classified setting, as to what you said to the grand jury?
Senator, I'm here to testify to this committee about everything I'm allowed to, and
You're allowed under Rule 6E to tell us what you said to the grand jury. This is kind of the first day that an assistant U.S. attorney goes to the first grand jury and is asked by a witness, can I talk about what I told you? And the answer is yes, you know.
Senator, I will consult with counsel and provide the appropriate answer.
Let me just say right to the point, Mr. Patel. What are you hiding? Why won't you tell us? You testified under a grant of immunity after taking the Fifth Amendment, as you're privileged to do, and the appearance here is that you have something to hide. I submit to my colleagues on the committee, we need to know what the grand jury testimony is. We need access to that second volume. And you have no objection to our seeking it, but you won't tell us, even in a classified confidential setting. I think that position is disqualifying.
That was days of testimony years ago. I don't have the ability to recollect
Well, you can
that.
refresh your recollection with access
The
to
transcript.
Let me ask you,
City.
And I think you obviously have read a lot about it during the 24 plus years since that, and most Americans have. There's a general consensus that there was a massive intelligence failure that's caught us all by surprise, even though the World Trade Center had been attacked earlier. Do
do you think stovepiping was a problem in our intelligence failure?
There's no question about it, Senator.
Oh, okay. Well, based on your reading, okay, could you elaborate just
Yes,
a little? Yeah.
absolutely, Senator. When we looked back at the post 9/11 reporting and the post assessments that were made, it was very clear that there was stovepiping of information and intelligence that occurred at many levels, at the highest but also at the lowest levels, where information that was collected by the FBI, information that was collected by the CIA was not being shared. There was almost ships passing in the night, where if there was an integration of those intelligence elements and information being shared, it is highly likely that that horrific attack could have been prevented.
And that's
The witnesses can always reveal their grand jury testimony. Do you authorize us to get access to your testimony?
I authorize this committee to lawfully obtain any records that they are appropriately allowed to get.
And we are only, you're speaking in circles now, because we're only lawfully authorized to get that with your permission as the witness. Do you give us that permission?
Senator, I'm not an expert on this constitutional standard, and so I can't commit to something
It's not
that
expert.
I don't know.
It's like super simple. Grand jury rule 6E doesn't apply to witnesses. This is not hard. You are a witness. That is a simple fact.
I'm just
you can
relying on my
authorize
time
us to see it.
as a prosecutor, where grand jury witnesses were not allowed to share what they were testifying to. And when I was commissioned
Grand
before
jury
the judge,
witnesses are allowed to speak about what they were told
Wow.
about what they said in the grand jury, unless they're under a specific court order. Are you under a specific court order not to reveal your testimony in the grand jury?
Senator, I can't go
here right
into
now?
I can't go into court orders granted by the D.C. District Chief Judge.
If they apply to you, of course you can.
You want me to violate a court order?
You're saying that there's a secret court order in which you can't tell whether you're subject to a court order or not?
I'm telling you that if you find the applicable court order and it permits this request,
I don't need a court order if you give authorization.
I'm not the one that has the authority to do that.
Yes, you are, as a witness. You're just wrong on that.